Hello, and welcome back to the program. It is so nice to be back. Tonight, we are on episode 55. We are going to be talking about lighthouses, the uses for them far beyond just guiding ships in the night. So, I hope you guys have had a fantastic weekend. Good start to your week as well. Thank you all for tuning in live tonight. Let's see, I'm having a little bit of problems with my camera connecting. Give me just a moment, folks. And make sure you can see my camera. Okay, so while we wait for my camera to pull up, what we're going to be discussing tonight is lighthouses. We've all heard the official story, tall towers on rocky coast, built to warm ships of dangerous shorelines and guide them safely to harbor. There's my feed here. I'm not sure why it's not pulling up here, folks. I'm sorry. There we go. Got the glitches worked out now. So we've all heard the official story. Tall towers on rocky coast, built to warn ships of dangerous shorelines and guide them safely into harbor. That's what we're taught in school. That's what the plaques say. And that's what most people accept without even looking closer. But what if that was not the full story? What if a huge number of these lighthouses were never just lighthouses at all? What if many of them were built or heavily modified with features that make almost no sense for guiding ships, but makes perfect sense for something else? Something that could approach from any direction, something that could hover in place, something that didn't need a runway or a harbor. I'm talking, of course, about airships. And here's what really gets me when you actually start to look at the construction details of a lot of these lighthouses, the reinforced platforms on top, the heavy overbuilt staircases that go all the way to the roof, the strange railings and anchor points, the location on high ground with clear approaches. A lot of it stops making sense for just maritime navigation and starts to look an awful lot like infrastructure designed to dock giant airships. Tonight, we're going to dig deep into this. We're going to look at who actually built America's lighthouses, when they were built, and why so many of them have structural features that seem completely unnecessary for guiding boats. Because once you start seeing the pattern, you can't unsee it. Um, Mooring stations were truly everywhere. They weren't a fad, they weren't on one or two skyscrapers. They were on many skyscrapers throughout the country in the past and throughout the world. And these mooring stations were everywhere. These airships were around and had a big history long before we were told they existed. This all fits the exact same timeline and methodology we've been talking about for months now. Advanced old world infrastructure that's got repurposed, rewritten, or quietly erased during that big reset window. So let's get into it tonight, folks. And again, so great to be back with you guys. Sorry I couldn't do Sunday's show, Father's Day, hectic long day. Had a lot of fun though, a lot of fun, great time. As you can hear, it is a nice bright studio again. I got my daughter back into her room. We're still working on the toddler bed. It's constructed though, but it's more getting her transition from her bed she's in now to an actual like bed with no rails. So anywho, though, it's going to be a lot louder here tonight. Hopefully, you guys can hear me much better than you could the last few episodes, and I won't have a toddler to deal with tonight. Though it's always a blessing, I tell you what. Um, Great place to be a part of the show. If you guys have not already found your way to my Discord, highly recommend it. Michael, Nephilim Hunter, you guys do great jobs helping out on that. I see a lot of people in the chat, a lot of the regulars. How you guys all doing tonight? Nephilim Hunter, Cake, Xena, M. So good to see you all back here. It's been a while. It feels like it's been a while. Summer is a busy time here, folks. Even though my wife's done with school for the year, we got my son enrolled in a bunch of cool science classes for summer, and he's been going to those at 7:30 in the morning, and been a lot of running around, but a lot of fun times though. A lot of fun in the sun. And if you guys haven't seen my recent shorts, my videos on like TikTok and Instagram, I've been carrying on that old world tour guide series that I showed you the last few episodes. I have gone to Appleton, I've gone to Menasha. I got plans going to a few other cities around the area, Oshkosh, and then travel further down south, Madison, Milwaukee. Of course, have to hit Green Bay. Somebody sent me Green Bay's courthouse picture of that. Oh man, it looks like a magnificent palace, like a palace right out of France. So, let's start with the official mainstream story of airships. We had an episode or two talking about airships quite a few months back now. Uh, if you guys haven't seen that, highly recommend watching that. That gives a lot of the details and specs of these airships. Because even if we only stick to what they admit in the mainstream, the technology was already incredibly advanced for these airships, right? We're talking a speed at the time between 70 and 80 miles per hour, faster than any cargo ships, any cruise ships at the time. A and what really was impressive for the era was the cargo capacity. They were able to carry 10 to 15 tons, some of them traveling as much as 10 days in the sky and can go thousands of miles without refueling or stopping. And of course, the amount of tons they could carry would also allow for very precision like delivery, hovering and lowering these cargoes to some of these remote lighthouses. I mean, how would even a ship dock in some of those? You've seen the first few, there's no real coastline, it's all just a rocky coastline. Or something like this, where would a ship safely dock with any large amounts of cargo or anything like this? How would you get this material out in the middle of nowhere at the time? Those Chicago water cribs that we talked about in the Chicago episode, how were they really able to get those 7 miles out into Lake Michigan? Nephilim, you said I think some of them were just to show when you were close to the shore, and maybe you loaded onto a boat and went from there. Yes. The Penn Station picture you shared, such a shame that they destroyed it. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Penn Station, I shared a picture on my Instagram today, just comparing Penn Station to what's there now, Square Garden. And it's really sad that that beautiful, massive old Penn Station in New York. If you look at some of the interior photos, I'll share some more if you guys would like to see them. But it was a building made to last thousands of years, and it was torn down just after 50 years. And one of the main reasons they gave for that is the inability to maintain it. In just 50 short years from the supposed founding of this building, the creation of this building, they say, it was in disrepair. They couldn't clean, and the massive high cathedral-like ceilings, they couldn't keep those clean. They couldn't maintain the marble. Parts of the ceiling was already starting to fall. and they say it was only 50 years old. When you look at it towards the end of its life, it looked like, I mean, even in the middle of its life, it looked like it was thousands of years old. It did not look at all like new construction. None of the photos I've seen of it, like while it was in operation, looked like new construction. But anyways, back to the narrative of airships, and we all know the Hindenburg disaster in 1937. That's the image that they always show, the giant silver ship bursting into flames in New Jersey. Oh, the humanity. And that's usually where the story ends in our education about airships. For most people, airships are always, when I ever share airships or anything like that, I always get the same statement from a lot of commenters. Oh, airships are dangerous. They went kaboom. But that's not even close to the full picture. Before the Hindenburg, airships had an extremely impressive safety record compared to early airplanes. The German Graf Zeppelin, for example, flew over 1,000,000 miles and carried more than 13,000 passengers without a single fatality. It crossed the Atlantic dozens of times. It even went around the world. The US Navy built two massive airships, the USS Akron and the USS Macon. Each one was over 785 feet long, longer than three football fields. They could stay in the air for days at a time, travel thousands of miles at a time, and they actually functioned as flying aircraft carriers. Let me see if I got a few of those USS Macon airship photos here. I'll just show you some airships while we talk about the mainstream narrative behind the airships. So the US Navy built two of these, and they actually functioned as flying aircraft carriers. They had about a half a dozen fighter planes and scout planes in the interior belly of these airships. They could launch and recover small fighter planes while still in flight using a trapeze-like system, and it would just kind of be a hook and pulley type system that would pull them right back up into the lower fuselage. These were truly engineering marvels, really way ahead of the time of horse and buggy that they were just coming out of. These looked like flying fortresses and flying or flying cruise ships. Like the Hindenburg was some of the most luxurious accommodations I've seen, even in those old world cruise ships, like the Titanic. When you compare that, and I mean, compare the beauty of old cruise ships to new cruise ships, it doesn't even come close, does it? So they could hover in place, they could land on water or on a mooring mast on top of a building. They did not need a mooring mast on top of a building. Sorry. They didn't need long runways like airplanes. Any reasonably flat area with the right equipment could become an airport. And they were being used for exploration too. Airships went to the North Pole and Antarctica when airplanes of that era couldn't reliably do it. And most of the airplanes today have hard times traversing Antarctica and to the North Pole. There's only certain weather windows that they can truly get a chance to land in Antarctica. And of course, you have to have special permission and special clearance. So we had incredibly versatile, long range, vertical lift forms of transportation. And then, after just a handful of high profile incidents, mostly and mainly just the Hindenburg, most of them involving experimental military ships like the airships of the US Navy, and flying in bad weather against common sense or flight etiquette at the time. So basically, pilot error was responsible for the two U.S. Navy airship accidents. And the Hindenburg was a set of mysterious freak circumstances, whole bunch of coincidences that led to the Hindenburg explosion. And camera position just at the right time, perfect line said, the rest is history. Many other examples of false flags. I think the Hindenburg is one of the first false flags in the modern era. Yeah, absolutely, M. Bring them back indeed. And we're told that just natural progress, airplanes were better. End of story. And that is far from the case. But when you line up the timelines, it matches almost perfectly with everything else we've talked about on this show. The same window when antennas, ether antennas, and spires were being systematically removed from buildings across America and Europe, when the bells were being removed from the bell towers across America, Europe, and the world, the same window when a lot of old world infrastructure was being torn down or modernized, torn down for the highway system, the same window when transportation suddenly shifted hard towards ground and sea oil only, and largely towards oil petroleum based vehicles. Airships took a lot less fuel than fixed wing aircrafts. They were a lot more fuel efficient. Like I said, they could travel thousands of miles, stay up in the air for days. Fixed wing aircrafts at the time of airships could barely even cross the Atlantic in one shot. Only the more larger and modern ones before airships got cut were they able to cross the Atlantic. It's almost like somebody or some parasites made a decision that we weren't supposed to have easy, long range vertical transportation anymore. Sabotage, in my opinion. Yeah, the Hindenburg and all of the airships with it. It was a boycott on helium or a moratorium on helium. The U.S. to this day still holds the largest supply of helium gas, and Germany was the producer of these airships. The German Zeppelins, the USS Akron and Macon were actually both Zeppelins gifted to America from, well, not gifted, but they were war reparations given to America after the First World War. So America and the Allies knew that if they were to defeat Germany once and for all, they needed to shut down these Zeppelins. A big reason as well that they got completely scrapped after one high profile crash. And what better high profile crash than the Yahtzees prize and joy, the Hindenburg, on American soil? So you take out the Yahtzees' flying fortresses, you can completely reshape the already soon to be Second World War. And then this brings us straight to the lighthouses. So let's talk about why so many lighthouses look like they were built for something much bigger than just guiding ships. I'm sorry if you guys are having a hard time with my video. It's kind of being a little bit slow loading up. Do apologize if you guys can't see the photo being shared, but my camera seems to be okay. Anywho, a huge number of these lights are placed on high cliffs, rocky headlands, or isolated points with clear open approaches from multiple directions. That's ideal for something that can come in from any angle or hover. Second, this is part that really stands out. Look at the actual construction. Many of these lighthouses have flat or heavy reinforced roofs. They have wide, heavy staircases that go all the way to the top. Staircases that are massively overbuilt if the only thing they were carrying was a lighthouse keeper and a lantern. They have platforms, railings, and structures, reinforcements that look suspiciously like they were designed to handle mooring lines, winches, and massive pole systems of a giant airship in the wind. Now, just showing you a couple lighthouses while we talk about lighthouses, but let's show you a couple mooring stations as well. So you can see just how similar they look. And these are just relatively simple in design by what they show us here. They can be built anywhere, anywhere where there's a relative flat open area. Boom, you can have a mooring station. This looks just like a little mini lighthouse. And here is kind of a diagram of just how advanced some of these mooring stations were. They used magnetic couplers, and that's where you see a lot of those like towers and stuff with those points at the end, like those little ball points at the end. I believe those were part of those magnetic couplers that you see here in this diagram. That the airship just gets close and they just kind of couple them in place and it just almost electro locks them. Um, just look at the advanced technology for the early 1900s that they say these existed in. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Sorry. Yeah, I always bring this up, guys. Why do I do this video so late? I am trying to get it down to 10 o'clock. Jeff, eh, originally I wanted to do like 9 o'clock right out of the gate in summertime. We're also transitioning my toddler to a toddler bed, with just the little railings and stuff. So, and that hasn't been working out too well. I was hoping that would go a lot smoother. My first kid, maybe it was just being that it's like almost 8 years since I did this with my first kid. Um, Maybe it's just I don't remember how hard it was, but yeah, it's been kind of tough since I got that toddler bed together in there. Once she gets down to a good sleeping schedule, I mean, she was pretty much fussing right up until the show, and I think I heard her a couple times already, but once I get her to a better sleeping schedule, I do truly wanna have even like a 7, 8 o'clock range. It is late for me as well, folks. After this show gets done at 12 o'clock my time, I still have like an hour or 2 of editing and clipping and getting it uploaded to all my other platforms like Spotify. Follow me there if you guys haven't already. Uh, and yeah, I mean, I would love to have it earlier. It is my plan. She's These kids, they grow up so fast. Eventually, she will get set at a good bedtime at 8:30 when she goes to bed, but she'll actually go to bed around that time. My hopes. Bear with me, folks. The earlier the better for me as well. 10:30 is late for this old man. I have to be up at 7 a.m. tomorrow regardless. So, back to these lighthouses, these perfect mooring stations though here. Let me see if I can pull up a couple more diagrams about of them while we're talking about. And like I said, these mooring stations were everywhere, folks. They were said to be just a fad, an experimental phase. One you might have heard about in school here is the Empire State Building, famously had a mooring station on top of it. They said officially only an airship docked with it for like a few moments, and it was way too windy, and they never tried again. Okay, that's fantastic. However, why do so many other cities across the world also have buildings with mooring stations in them, built around the same time frame? I know they didn't have internet, I know they didn't have email back then, but you think all these architects would kind of get the word out, "Hey, these mooring stations, they don't work. Let's not spend tons of extra money and material and time." I mean, I know they're just whipping out these skyscrapers in less than a year's time, right? But maybe not build these experimental airship stations that didn't work. I mean, I showed you the one in the Medina Athletic Club, the Intercontinental Hotel in Chicago now. They removed the mooring station on top of that. The London House looks like it has a clear mooring station on it. I mean, tons of these old world buildings. Once you start seeing lighthouses as mooring stations, you will truly start seeing airship docks everywhere. And it shows you the remnants of a much larger old world airport grid and old world flight map than we've been told. This was not just some experimental fad, folks. This is a top view of that beautiful mooring station that was on top of the Empire State Building. I think it's turned into an observation tower, though I mean, a lot of the structural part of it remains the same. But I mean, just look how advanced it looks, even for the time. I mean, yeah, they claim they slapped the Empire State Building up in what, a year's time, but I mean, it looks like a spaceship on top of, like a rocket ship on top of it. And all of that to just find out, here's another shot of it. All of that to just find out, oh, didn't work, guys. Sorry. Like the amount of engineering that went into something like that. You don't just build something that massive, that much of a new process and build it on top of the tallest building. You build upwards, you're going to build it on a 5 story, then a 10, then a 20, then a 30. You're not just going to build it on one of the biggest buildings at the time. I mean, put all that detail, all that engineering into it just to find out, oh, sorry, doesn't work here. 5:54 in Berlin, be 5 a.m. in London. Oh, wow. Yeah, it is very early or very late, depending on where you guys tune into. But I kind of like the coast to coast. I don't know if you guys grew up listening to Coast AM, the little late night talk conspiracy show. I grew up listening to that. I kind of like that vibe here late at night. But trust me, guys, I'm not a fan of the late night either. As soon as I can get those kids to bed at a early time. Hey, Wojo, good evening. Good evening. Thanks for stopping in. So, when you look at a lot of these old lighthouses, you see the same engineering features as these mooring stations and these skyscraper towers. And here's what really makes this hard to ignore: a large number of these lighthouses were built or heavily upgraded during the exact same time period when airship technology was advancing the fastest, roughly 1870 to 1930. So, at the same time, these lighthouses were being rapidly built up around the world, especially in America. These lighthouses that look suspiciously like a mooring station, these airships were exploding in technology and abundance. Coincidence? I don't think so. But there's just so many of these coincidences in our history, isn't there? It is possible, yes, but when you see the same pattern repeating across dozens of sites, overbuilt structures in strategic high locations, some of these lighthouses were built in the most isolated and remote areas in the world. It makes perfect sense that airships were not only used to help construct these lighthouses, because getting the materials to these lighthouses logistically would have been nearly impossible at the time without something like an airship. So, really, were these just lights for ships or were they something more? Think about what it would actually take to moor a giant airship. You need height, you need a strong platform, you need the ability to handle wind loads and the pull of the ship. You need clear approaches. A lot of these lighthouses check every single one of those boxes. And here's another shot. I just kind of want to show you a few of these mooring stations first. This is another shot of the mooring station on top of the Empire State Building. And just look at the technology. It just almost looks like advanced technology slapped right on top of that building, doesn't it? It really looks like a remnant of something far lost. And here's a couple more mooring stations too. Kind of another visual shot of the very detailed and technical precision that goes into docking these. Technical precision, but really it's just connecting a magnetic electromagnetic coupling to the top of these mooring stations and then just securing them with guidelines. There's just a couple more. I mean, the similarity of lighthouses to these look like, it's not even close. And here's, I mean, these mooring stations literally can be built anywhere. Here's a mooring station on top of a ship. The US Navy had half a dozen ships equipped with mooring stations at one time, built in the remote areas of the world. As long as you have a clear approach and a little bit of a clear area around it, you can even build a airship landing area on water. There was a lot of German airships that had hangars on water. This is kind of another cutaway of most people think when they see an airship, they think of a blimp, like just a big inflatable balloon with a little cabin on the bottom. But in this cutaway, you can really see just this is part of the cutaway of the cabin underneath. Most of the underside of the airship, at least one third to half of the airship, up to halfway point, was accessible and filled with crew quarters, dining halls, dance halls, accommodations, passenger accommodations, full-size kitchens, galleries, actual outdoor viewing areas where you can go outside and get a sight of the beautiful view. Yes, Lisa, I love the quiet time at night too. I mean, I complain it being late, but at the same time, I've always been a night owl. I mean, I definitely know a little bit later or earlier would be better. Yeah. So compare these to the known airship mooring stations that were built in the 1920s and the 1930s. Let me go back to some of these lighthouses. Now that I showed you some of these mooring stations, and we'll show you some more of those later too. But I mean, just look at this lighthouse, just built in the most remote high cliff area. A perfect open approach for an airship, but for a ship to bring any type of cargo, supplies, when they built the thing, looks like I have a helicopter pad on it now, but a helicopter could never carry the 10 to 15,000 ton cargo that an airship could carry. So again, some of these remote regions with no coast, no docks or anything, just a lighthouse built on a slab of rock in the middle of rough seas. No ship could bring the material logistically to these locations in the time frame that many of them were said to be built in. Again, much like most of the construction in that 1800s, early 1900s time period, you have rapidly constructed buildings despite impossible logistics of the time to get the materials there. They were building these in less than 1 to 2 seasons, so less than a year to 2 years at max for these lighthouses in America. So, here's what really makes this hard to ignore. A large number of these lighthouses were built or heavily upgraded during the exact same time period when the airship technology again was being advanced between that 1870s and 1930s period, especially in America. And speaking of all these lighthouses in America, let's talk about who actually designed these buildings and lighthouses. I'm sorry, who actually designed the buildings of these lighthouses. Two names show up constantly in America: George G. Meade and Orlando M. Poe. George Meade, the same man who later commanded Union forces at Gettysburg, spent years as an engineer with the U.S. Army Corps of Topographical Engineers. His job was designing and constructing lighthouses along the East Coast and in Florida. He was known for innovative designs. Is my camera not? Oh, there we go. Sorry, my camera's not on there. He was known for innovative designs, including iron screw pile lighthouses that could be built in difficult locations. He got things done efficiently and effectively at very high standards, or so they say. Showing you some of these lighthouses just out in the most remote regions in the world. This is Bishop Rock, UK. Breezy. Like I said, these buildings, again, were built remarkably fast, too. Some of them in the most remote, difficult sites imaginable, and completed in just a year or two. Even when, again, logistics should have been extremely challenging. And when you see some of these old lighthouses, like in off of Lake Michigan and stuff, think of that big freeze every winter, like really 5, 6 months of the year is not favorable for construction in today's time with all of our heavy equipment and modern machinery in the upper Midwest, let alone back then when it was just supposedly horse and buggy, right? Okay. Sorry, I'm just looking through some of the questions here too. A lot of people think they use sound and frequencies to move the stones. Many cultures have stories about this. Yes, Michael, I agree. There has been a lot of evidence, and we talked a little bit about frequency levitation. I think frequency was used a lot in the way old ancient times to shape a lot of these stones, like those megalithic walls found all over the world, just perfectly shaped stones. They look like they were shaped like almost some kind of forge or some kind of vibrational device. You can use, like, if you use the cymatic pattern table and you play a certain frequency, you can see it shape sand into different patterns, different formations. And those patterns and formations geometrically are repeated in a lot of these beautiful old world structures. Temple of Solomon. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Okay. So let me see where I was at my place here. Sorry, I don't want to lose my place again. It really makes you wonder, though. Um, were they simply building navigational aids for ships, or were they building dual purpose infrastructure? Dual purpose infrastructure that was being supplied the building materials to be built. I mean, look at this lighthouse just right on top of a rock face in the middle of the ocean. No sand, no like easy place for any cargo ship to pull up to bring the materials to build it. How are you going to get that lighthouse built other than something like an airship to deliver 10 to 15 tons of raw material at a time? And again, airships handled far better than airplanes and small cargo ships of the time in high winds and treacherous storms, often along these ocean front coasts that these lighthouses were built on. And why were so many of these engineers military men? Why was the Lighthouse Board heavily connected to the Army Corps of Engineers? It's all goes back to these government entities, these military controlled entities. All of this infrastructure had to be planned out and laid out precisely because, they didn't want us in the private sector poking around or building something and digging up something that was already there. The governments, the controlling entities like the US government, uh, has the knowledge of what's actually underground, I'm quite sure, in large part, and what was already here. And they don't want us stumbling along something accidentally. So let's get into a couple specific American examples of these lighthouses. Like one of the strongest uh, lighthouses for being built and used as an airport mooring station is Split Rock Lighthouse in Lake Superior in Minnesota. Built between 1909 and 1910, so a little under a year's time, it sits on top of a sheer 130-foot cliff. There was no road access. Everything had to be hauled up from barges using steam hoist and derricks. The tower itself is a solid brick with an extremely reinforced concrete foundation and base. Let me pull up, while we're talking about that one, the specific photo of Split Rock so you guys can see. Again, another just impossible remote region. And they're saying that this was all built with relatively primitive technology, horse and buggy, hammer and chisel. I mean, it's the 1910s, so they started having primitive, rudimentary, heavy power tools, but not much more than that. Okay, here we go on some Split Rock. Just look at that lighthouse just perched high up on a cliff, no roads to or from it. In the middle of Lake Superior, very harsh winters. Think the song Edmund Fitzgerald. It's very harsh building climates even today. That's not why there's not much north of Lake Superior in terms of large cities and infrastructure because it pretty much stays frozen year round. Okay. One of the other things you have to ask yourself, why build something this strong, this high up in such a difficult and remote location? If it was only ever meant to guide ships, that kind of engineering makes a whole lot more sense if it was also designed to handle the stress of a mooring a giant airship in high winds. Let me see if I can see a couple more pictures of Split Rock here. Just look at how high up on that rock face it is. Imagine getting materials there in 1900s. There's another beautiful picture of it. I believe I've been there once a long, long time ago when I was a little kid, and we drove my sister up to Minnesota for a college visit. I remember going to some of these. My mom's fascinated with lighthouses. She absolutely loves them. They are beautiful, just in their own sense. I mean, just impressive architecture. Again, even the smallest ones, they're just impressive architecture. We don't really build like that, even in those small scales. We don't build lighthouses today. I mean, we have the technology where they're kind of obsolete, but even the simple lighthouses they built in large part were just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Okay, you see similar patterns in other Great Lake lights: heavy construction, strategic high ground, reinforced tops, and features that go well beyond simple navigation needs. I'm sorry, folks. I don't know why that screen is not going away on me, but I hope you guys can see my camera. So these aren't isolated coincidences. These repeating patterns across different regions and different engineers. And when you line them all up, the timing becomes very difficult to ignore. So these lighthouses pop up all at the same time as all this other beautiful, massive architecture that we're building all across the country. Same time as these domed capitals, these high towered post offices. Because why would you need a giant tower for a post office? So many pointless like structures. Let's look at some of the other structures that I believe were quite possibly mooring stations at the time, not just lighthouses. Look at these water towers. This is North Point Water Tower in Milwaukee. Looks just like the Chicago Water Tower. Think of those ugly domed top water towers that we have nowadays. And nothing like these medieval looking towers that they were building for their supposed water towers. They say even like the Chicago water tower looking very similar to this was just mostly decorative. Another form of a mooring station, these were those water cribs in Lake Michigan that I told you they built right after the Great Fire in 1871, right? And you can see they have a lighthouse tower right there. Also looks like it's doubled as a mooring station. This was 7 Mile water crib. This called 7 Mile water crib because it's 7 miles out of the lake. You can see that little dome top. That's that magnetic coupler that you see in those mooring diagrams that I showed you. That's how those airships delivered supplies, food, materials. This is how these water cribs actually got built. They didn't just float these out there with no heavy equipment, anything like that that they said. This was a perfect job for airships. How do you get the crew to and from these water cribs as well? Easily with airships. That's why so much of the skies are whited out in photos at the time, just like this one. And I'm sure you can find odd edging details. Oh, yeah, look, when you zoom in to these photos, you can see that weird blurry edging on all the land masses. That means that somebody's went in and deliberately cut out the skies from this photo, as they have hundreds and thousands of photos I've showed you of the past before. Big reason why I think they did that is because the photos that you don't see altered, you see tons of airships in them, don't you? Like, just look at some of my slide of airships, how they were seen pictured everywhere from Cairo, Egypt, Birmingham, UK, London, Chicago, Cleveland, everywhere. You see photos of airships because they were abundant in the sky. They were more than just a fad. And up until the Hindenburg, they had a fantastic track record. And they were far safer than even the fixed wing aircraft at the time and the fixed wing aircraft today. I mean, think about it. You hear on the news almost daily another aircraft crash, another couple dead. The Graf Zeppelin flew tens of thousands of miles, millions of miles, tens of thousands of passengers, zero fatalities its whole lifetime. And if it wasn't for the moratorium on helium leading up to World War II, I do believe that these airships would still be around today. In large part, it was the war effort, it was the rise of petroleum, and look who controlled the petroleum and the oil industry. And it was the whole global shift from a much more efficient travel system, free energy system, all those ether antennas being taken off of the towers at the time, all the cymatic bells, the sound resonating, healing temples, all those bells were being taken down. They say to be melted down for ammunition, but still, all at the same time, this infrastructure is being taken down and a petroleum oil based car controlled industry is running through old world America, destroying so much of these beautiful structures, these beautiful cities, these beautiful neighborhoods, to where we only have 5% of the original architecture, the original beautiful structures pre 1900 in America. That's staggering. I mean, we're only celebrating our 250th birthday. And to only have 5% of that original architecture, that's just that's sad. So, the reset timeline connection of all of this, it's quite clear. All at the same time, this was supposedly ramping up and then suddenly stopped. Everything's connecting to the bigger picture of what we've been exploring for months. The biggest wave of serious lighthouse construction and major upgrades in America happens between 1870 and 1930. That's the exact same window when airship technology was systematically removed from buildings across the country. It also the same window when we see antennas and spires being systematically removed from buildings across the country and world. Same window when a lot of the old world architecture was being torn down or modernized. And it's the same window when transportation suddenly shifted hard towards ground, sea, oil, petroleum only. After the Hindenburg disaster in 1937 and a few other incidents, airships basically disappear from the mainstream story. And around that same time, the pace of new lighthouse construction slows dramatically as well. Because when they became just guiding lights for ground based ships, they really didn't serve near as robust as a purpose as the government and military invested into them. So they slowly faded away from construction and from new construction. And, now there's no new lighthouses. I mean, most of it's all operated by satelloons, balloons, navigation, GPS, relays, etc. these days. I don't think it's cars that destroyed the architecture. No, it wasn't cars itself, Seth. It was the deliberate shift to petroleum-based travel sources. We had so many more efficient sources of travel that didn't rely heavily on petroleum and oil, airships being one of them. Most of the cars at the time before petroleum really started ramping up were electric. There was air-powered cars, literally, compressed air-powered cars. There were cars like Tesla, said to have invented, that ran truly on electric energy from the ether above. And all of that got shut down all at around the same time airships got grounded permanently. And no other technology. Like, how many airplane crashes have we had since then? And we never shut down airplanes. Like I said, airships had a far better safety rating than airplanes at the time. When an airship was crashing, it wasn't like a sudden and abrupt appointment with the ground. It would be a slow drift down to the ground. A lot of times you could safely bail out before it would crash. And even when it would hit the ground at any high speeds, it would not explode. It was when it was provided primarily with helium. You could solar power an airship. Yes, has so many square meters of panel space, not solar power, ether powered. I believe these airships weren't necessarily powered, at least the true old world airships weren't powered on helium. They were powered on ether energy. I mean, the things that we could do with the electricity in our skies, that's what the past knew pre reset. That's why there were all these ether antennas on so many of these old world buildings. You can harness the power of the ether right now. Just take a copper wire attached to a drone and fly it up. Have the end of the copper wire on a big spool, attach it to a voltmeter and see the charge. Heck, touch it yourself. Well, I wouldn't really recommend that because you will get quite a jolt. But test it yourself, and you will see that you are indeed harnessing power from the ether above. And the parasites that run this world want that information as obscurely known as possible. Most people that invent energy efficient or true energy neutral forms of transportation are mysteriously met with a quick and sudden demise. Stan Marsh was, I believe, in the 1980s, one big example. He developed a car that ran completely on water. He could drive all the way to New York and LA on less than 10 gallons of just water. And he was talking with potential investors in a Cracker Barrel and drinking his lemonade, and all of a sudden grasped his throat, ran out of the restaurant. His brother or uh, cousin that was with him, I believe, followed him out, and his last words were, "They killed me. They killed me. They poisoned me." Something of that extent. And that's many such cases of people that come out with breathtaking inventions that Stanley Myers, thank you, Stanley Myers, not Stan Marsh. Stan Marsh, not from South Park. Sorry, guys. Okay. So again, it just all connects to this reset timeline, these lighthouses, and then the disappearances of these lighthouses, all connecting with airships. And most of these lighthouses just sit abandoned. Look at some of these beautiful airship pictures when the skies aren't fully whited out. You see not just one airship, but multiple airships in them, don't you? And again, it wasn't just lighthouses, wasn't just mooring towers on top of skyscrapers. Big towers like this one seen here, I think, were built for type of mooring stations. These water towers, back in the 1800s, again, just so over the top compared to what we build now, right? If you compare the old world towers to the ones we build today, the difference is striking. Modern water towers are usually just simple, ugly, utilitarian things, just a big steel or concrete tank sitting on top of a plain pole or frame. They're built to do one job and look exactly like it. But the water towers that they were building back then were just absolutely breathtaking. Absolutely breathtaking. What they say were water towers. Like here, let's look at the Chicago water tower. I showed you guys a few photos of that for my trip to Chicago, but just to pull up another few examples of them, just this is what they said they were using for water. And even though they say Chicago's water tower was decorative, I mean, look at the top. You got that little ballpoint thing, just like I said, that little magnetic coupler point on top you see on a lot of these towers of the old world. I would love to get a return to airships, Seth, but I mean, think of how hard it is to get anything past the network that they have weaved to ensnare and control us all. Airships would have been amazing exploration devices, and they were used in large part for exploration of Antarctica, the North Pole. There were personal airships. Airships were easy to build yourself, personal single airships. We couldn't have such a robust flying system like that. We couldn't have free and independent flight. The efficiency of flight back then versus like the fixed wing aircrafts they shove us into now. I mean, it was a lot cheaper of an operation. And if it would have been allowed to continue, it would have gotten even better and more robust and far more competitive means of transportation than the airplane industry is today. There is no competition with anything in this world, and that's all by design, folks. Make no doubt about it. There's a reason why we're driving this same internal combustion engine car in most part that we have been for the last 100 years. It's because they are stifling any creativity, anything that breaks the mold, any patent, any invention that comes along that would break the system in place, the system that used to monetarily or monetize everything. Everything just drains us financially and it's going up and up. We are the only species in this world that has to pay for food, for water, and for shelter, the basics of survival. And yeah, I get the cost of infrastructure buildings, etc., but they monopolize it and monetize it to a way where we're debt slaves. So much of us have high max credit limits and we're paying for a 20 to 30-year house loan and we're paying for a 5, 6 year car loan at 8 to 10 to 20% interest. I mean, not to mention the utility bills, the gas, the electric, all of that because it's from a non-renewable source or the renewable sources like solar are far too inefficient or too costly to be robustly used. So they have the excuse to use the fossil fuels, as they coined it, again, to make you think that it's a limitless resource. I think oil and petroleum, much like water, is a unlimited resource of this realm of ours, much like the ether. But they can claim its limits, they can claim its scarcities, they can partition off large areas of the map, even if there is lands beyond the north or south poles. They partition so much of the area of our known realm that, and then you have talk about explorers like Admiral Byrd saying large and limitless resources beyond the ice. And he just got hushed, and no one else has ever said anything about it since. Jeff, I'm sorry if the ads are a nuisance. I have it at the lowest setting YouTube allows it. I'll see if there's something else I can do for the live ads, but I think I already have it at the lowest setting. I do apologize, folks. That's, I never ask you guys to donate to the channel. I mean, there are options too. That's how, that's how I get, majority of my income and my support is from the monetization programs on these channels. And it's why my number one principle, I don't push, random products, ointments, creams, pills, topographical creams, what have you. Like, I don't push any of that stuff. I don't advertise anything that I don't believe in. And that's why I've never advertised anything because and I got inboxes of people that want me to push ads, but I just won't do it. I stick to the back end monetization process. I don't ask it for you guys. There are subscription tiers available on my pages. I'd love if you like the page. You want to support the channel. That's the best way to do it. But I never push that really. Just for the simple fact that it's not about the money for me. I mean, I make a living doing this, and that's a blessing from God, but it's not about the money. It's about the message. And when you push these pills and these creams and these ointments and vitamins, it's solely any message that you want to get out there. So sorry if YouTube has popped up ads here and there. I have it on the lowest setting for you guys because ads annoy me too. There's YouTube Premium, I know that's an option. Spotify has no ads on it. I'm on Spotify video after the lives if you guys want to. Follow on Spotify if you guys haven't already. I would appreciate that. So, wrapping up the lighthouse process for the evening, talking a little bit more about just This is a close up of the tower on the water tower in Chicago, one of the only buildings that survived the Great Fire, by the way, in the area. But just so out of place, so uncharacteristic for a water tower, but perfect for an airship mooring station. Am I right? And a lot of the old world water towers were built over the top like that. Here's another one. Of course, there's a big full photo of the Chicago water tower slash castle slash mooring station. One of those water cribs in Lake Michigan with a nice predominant lighthouse slash mooring station right on top of it. I just thought that was a beautiful picture of the Chicago water tower lit up. There's some more of these old world water towers I wanted to show you guys as well. I mean, such odd, over the top architecture, over the top construction for a water tower. And I mean, look how basic and simple we build them now. And it was a lot just like the lighthouses that they over the top built, over engineered. They served a lot more than just water towers, water storage. Yes, beggars can't be choosers, especially if you ain't paying for it. Exactly, exactly. Seth, you said I worked a shift in Antarctica as security, and I didn't see much. Most people there are stuck in structures, and everything is very compartmentalized. Yeah, that's what I heard, Seth. I'd love to hear some stories if you had any. Like, I bet it was just an interesting place to work. I'd love to sign up. I mean, supposedly anyone can sign up for a job in Antarctica. I mean, they have jobs available, dishwasher, cooks, janitors. So any blue collar Joe can apply for a job there. There's obviously limited jobs, but yeah, I hear, you're not going to get a job there and just like take off on a snowmobile and drive around and explore. It is very, very cold, very, very frigid, and you're kind of kept in these little like structures most of the time. But it would still just be a beautiful and interesting experience nonetheless. Do you think there is connection between Napoleon and the reset? Yes, I do, GTF. I think Napoleon is a a figmentation, a creation of history, more than likely at this point. I was a big Napoleon fan growing up. Well, not big Napoleon fan, but studier of the Napoleonic Wars and all that stuff. Napoleon, the man, the myth, the legend, and there's a lot of oddities when you kind of take yourself and remove yourself away from the mainstream narrative of everything. And you look into Napoleon as a man, and a lot of these people that we're taught in history are, in my opinion, either complete outright um, figments, creations, or highly embellished individuals. And I do believe Napoleon is one of them. I believe explains a lot of like, the fire of Russia and all of that stuff, or the fire of Moscow, I should say, in Russia, the Great Fire of Moscow. Yeah, there's a lot of oddities about Napoleon. I don't want to, go into it on a Lighthouse episode, but if you guys want, we can maybe definitely have an episode devoted to Napoleon. I wanted to an episode kind of just devoted to how much they fabricate history and how obvious it becomes when you know what to look for. Like, I hope this episode kind of gives you a know what to look for old world mooring stations. Like, when you see a lighthouse, you won't quite look at it the same. When you see an odd tower, empty belfry on top of a skyscraper, you look at it a little bit closer, like the London House in Chicago. When I seen that, I was like, oh, yeah, that's definitely a mooring station. And how these lighthouses were built in some of the remote areas of this realm. Like this one's in Russia, I believe, just on top of a rock face. Know where to safely dock a ship. You know the waters are going to be rough in that area. The winds are going to be even rougher. No small ship could really safely dock at something like that, let alone deliver materials to a place like that. And again, that's just a place they were just snapping up in less than 1 year's time. I will ask my buddy, he's a refrigeration engineer, for the explanation. Yeah, you should, Michael. Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Some of those fridges, they were powered by propane. I think, yeah, propane powered fridge. Those were amazing, I heard. Some of those fridges, I mean, heck, you could do a whole episode on the old appliances of the day. Like a fridge from the 1950s and stuff beats any fridge made today. Will last twice as long easily. And the features that they had in those old fridges too. I mean, you get a fridge today, and those Samsung fridges, especially, like they're just crud by what I've heard about them. You get a fridge today, and you're constantly calling over the repairman. They are junk compared to what they used to build for not just fridges but all appliances. Um, it's just really odd. All these water towers being built way over the top all across the world. And again, not just water towers. I mean, look at this. This is supposed to be a city hall at Milwaukee. Look at the top of it, minus the American flag we put there. Perfect mooring station. Am I right? I mean, why else would a city hall need a massive tower like that? A massive clock tower. I mean, it's just over the top. And when you see original construction photos of this Milwaukee City Hall, this is one of my old world tours I'm got to get to soon. I'm nearby Milwaukee, about an hour and a half, 2 hours. I haven't been there for years. I would love to see this building up close. But when you see the original construction of this city hall, you see it's just in a muddy street. Like such a beautiful over the top structure, muddy, rundown streets, no paved streets on either side of it. Nothing like it is now. It's like they did the exact opposite first. They would build the most complicated structures in muddy surroundings. Yeah, the old appliances last 20 plus years easily, easily. 100 years, really. And same with like even the AC units and stuff today. They had to outlaw the type of freon system that, or the type of freon that those old ACs from the 80s and 90s took, because if you could still get the freon for them, those things would continue running. But AC units today, like I have an AC unit that's like 5 years old, and I even do the maintenance on it, take it out and blow it out, change filters. And we've still had to have a repairman over twice since we bought it. Everything's just built to replace, even cars. Even like cars are just becoming more and more cheaply made, plastic material, plastic, unreplaceable materials, like the whole door panel. Like if a window switch went out, you could replace the window switch. Now you have to replace the whole door panel. Costs yourself almost $1,000, and you pretty much need the dealer to do it. It's where we're heading. Everything's just breakable and replaceable, but just completely opposite of what the beautiful past was all about. And sadly, you see them tearing down structures like that old Penn Station in less than 50 years. That's a new regime. That's a parasitic regime taking over, right? That's not the same civilization that built those beautiful structures. They wouldn't be the same civilization and tear it down just 50 years later. They would be able to maintain and keep that architecture going. All right. So, as I wrap up this portion here, I mean, there's tons more we can get into about mooring stations. I just wanted to talk a lot about lighthouses and their dual purposes, compare them to mooring stations, kind of have you see architecture from a different point of view. Like, it's not just the buried windows I want you guys to look at. Look upwards. Look what's on top of these structures. Look what was once on top of these skyscrapers, like the Medina Athletic Club, the their Intercontinental Hotel now in Chicago. Big, beautiful mooring station on top. Took it off, and it looks like an ugly, cut off portion of the tower, just like all the ether antennas, the spires. So much of the old world's technology is being removed systematically, piece by piece, little by little, and most people are not even aware of what they're removing and why. But hopefully, you guys have a little more keen eye after this. Look at some of those lighthouses, the few that are out there, because most of them are abandoned or just sat relics of what they used to be. I don't know what's going on with my slide player today. It's kind of being a little glitchy, but hope you guys are seeing both me and the visuals good enough when they're loading in. Just showing you some airships flying in the skies of the old world. The skies, when they are not altered and whited out, you see not just one, but multiple airships. When you could land on water, you could land in any old field, any place could be an airport, no matter how remote or isolated. And that's what they took away from us. And one of many things that they've taken away from us. So let's take a few of your guys' questions here, kind of wrap up tonight, talk about the rest of the week. You can't see any pictures. Wicked, can you see any pictures now? I hope so. Seth, oh, thank you very much, Seth. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I'm glad to have you as a subscriber. Just found your channel and it's kind of thing. Hey, I am glad that you found me, Seth. Thank you very, very much. Um, Designed that way. Yes, absolutely. Nephilim Hunter, you said I just bought a new car. I got a decent warranty on it, but man, it sucks. You can't just work on it yourself anymore. Too much tech in them now. Yeah, I know. I have a Nissan and it's somewhat workable, like, but changing the oil on it's even such a pain. Like, nothing like what I was taught how to change, changing oil, changing brakes, changing struts. I mean, all that stuff was so easy and doable. Changing alternators, to get to your alternator on your car these days, you have to most of the time like drop the whole engine. It's impossible to work on yourself. Very sad. Everything is made to be replaced, break easily and replace. Hey, thanks very much, Foss. I'm glad you enjoyed the show. Um, so next episode, Thursday, we should have a normal schedule this week. Thursday and Friday, 10:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. We will be live. Friday will be our open lines episode. Thursday, I got a couple segments in the works, kind of either thinking of combining them into one episode or splitting them out. So I'm not sure exactly what to call Thursday, but hopefully you will be entertained nonetheless. Take a couple more of your questions. Kristen, it's a great show. So good to see more and more awakening. Awesome conversation, my friends. Yes, it is. And that's part of the reason I love these live shows. Even if they're late at night, if they're hard to attend, just it's kind of a nice personable time with you, my audience. I mean, I've grown so big over almost a century, almost a decade of doing this now, but I don't really have like the chance to interact quite personally like I have since I started this podcast. Like I've said since day one, I want this podcast to be just as much as your guys' as it is mine because you guys have gotten me where I am over these years, and I would be not doing a show if it wasn't for you guys. I love the audience participation. I love the open line Fridays, the no scripted, just whatever you want to chat about, atmospheres. I just love the community I feel we are building just on this channel. But I agree with you about more and more awakening daily. And they really are. When I started doing this about a decade ago to today, so much more people have waken up since then. And it's growing daily, exponentially. And it's because the truth always wins in the end, my friends. Be not afraid. Have faith in the Lord God above. Whatever you believe in something and believe in something greater than yourself. Because it we were born into a battle of good versus evil. It's been going on long before any of us were around. And it seems like it's coming to a head, but it could be continuing long after we're gone. Um, our part is to help shape it in the direction of good. And I believe that's what the truth getting out and spreading and waking people up will do. Turn people to a different way, a way this realm used to run. Tip the scales of power. That's how we do it peacefully without ever having to rise up. We can do it with our minds and our voices. Absolutely make sure to smash the like button on the way out if you guys haven't already. Join the Discord. Thank you very much. Nephilim Hunter is a great admin, both in the lives and on the Discord. Also, shout out to Michael on the Discord and the live admins. You guys do a great job there. It's really helped the Discord kick off. We share a whole bunch of stuff before and after the show. Just, anything from random Mandela effects, show ideas, and just general chat announcements about upcoming episodes, etc. Seth, you said I have to take a trip from Northeast Ohio to South Dakota. Any good suggestions on good architecture sites to check out along the way? Oh, tons, tons. I mean, if you're driving, yeah, you definitely got to hit Chicago. Uh, see South Dakota. I mean, tons of places in Colorado region. I mean, pretty much every city, and that's what I always tell you guys. There's not like one great place. I mean, you can go to these big cities like Chicago. Can't say enough at how amazing Chicago was, and I want to go back already. But the smallest towns hold some of the biggest gems to our hidden past. I was just doing a little old world tours in Appleton, and the silliest narratives and the biggest gems I was finding where the narrative they give us doesn't add up. Appleton, I'll give you the story real quick if you guys haven't seen the short. City near me, um, medium-sized city now, but at the time, a very small frontier town. It was once known as the City of Ravines, and that was because they had well over 20, 30 glacial ravines right all around the downtown area. Why you would build your downtown, your city center, right in the middle of glacial ravines, I'm not sure, but obvious the problem they found was it was impossible to build infrastructure, roads, any buildings around it because they were all on top of 50-foot ravines. So Appleton's um, solution to this problem was one of the more unique solutions I've seen to excuse the several layers buried underground. They say they just threw uh, they filled in these glacial ravines with garbage, old cars, any type of garbage, yard, refuge, whatever, to fill these 50-foot plus ravines all around the downtown area. And supposedly that's how they just leveled out the city. They raised the city level by garbage right in the middle of downtown. So Appleton went from the city of ravines to the city of smelly garbage pits right in the middle of our downtown for a little bit until I guess they took care of it because they didn't have garbage service until 1940s. But even then, like Lawrence University, I was showing you guys some videos on my shorts of Lawrence University, some of the buildings around there, the Masonic Temple, all built in a year's time with a population of only 600 people. They were building big castles, big universities with such a small population in a very new frontier town with glacial ravines. Funny stories all around us. This type of information is gymnastics for the brain and expansion for the inquiry minds want to know. Yes, yes, it is gymnastics. And that's why I love having a show to talk to you guys all about it. My wife is a very great person. Mrs. Improbable Dreamer is great, but she has her careers and her ambitions and interests. And I'm sure she doesn't want to hear me talk about all the crazy gymnastics that is the old world and our true hidden histories narrative. She will entertain me, but now I have you guys here to do it all with, and it's just so much fun coming here 3 times a week to do it all with you guys. Kristen, you said here in central Ohio, we've got some great spots. Even the smallest towns have old world structures. I urge all to get out and explore your own cities. Yes, Ohio is very, very awesome old world hotspots. You guys have like the most mounds in any other state. And same with Wisconsin. Wisconsin, tons of small towns in Wisconsin, just loaded with old world history. Get out there and check it out, film it, take pictures of it while it's still there before it gets covered up and buried or covered with some cheap brick front gate or brick cover and removing all evidence of the beautiful structures that were once underneath those cheap modern bricks. All right, guys. So Thursday we will have a good episode in store for you. Like I said, I got a couple of different segments in the works. Hopefully, it will be very enjoyable for you. Hope you guys had a great night hanging out and chatting with me about lighthouses, airships, mooring stations, and of course, our old world hidden history. We will talk more about it on Thursday and Friday. Again, our open lines Friday, whatever you guys want to talk about, whatever subject you want to talk about. Get into the Discord, drop subject ideas for Friday's show. If you want to be a guest on the show, call into the show on Fridays, or if you have guest suggestions for the show, Discord or my email, I'm the improbable dreamer at gmail.com is a great place to do that. Thanks again for all of you tuning in live. I will see you Thursday night, 10:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. And until then, question everything, friends. Have a great rest of your night. See you Thursday.